as mayor, and I'll be mayor for, hopefully, run for re-election in 18 months, and be mayor for another term, I would like to leave the cemeteries in Newark, all of them, frankly, in better condition than they are now. As Officer Detective Whitley knows, they're havens for drugs, for nefarious acts of all different types, prostitution and the like. There's such a desecration of these holy sites, and I'm hoping that we can find some ways to change that. I said I go left, so.
Thanks. I'm Eitan Weiner Kaplow, rabbi of a synagogue in the northern Chicago suburbs. Grew up in Tenafly, New Jersey.
Fantastic.
There you go.
You went to Tenafly High School, I went to Old Penn High School.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll talk after. My question is this. I've been impressed that recently AIPAC has made some very exciting moves in terms of outreach to the African American community around Israel advocacy. My question to you is any suggestions you have to a room full of rabbis about how we as individuals, we as leaders of our communities can make also outreach attempts to African American communities around us. How will our efforts be received? What?
Okay, so the latter question, who cares?
Okay.
The first question is so important because, again, often, and blacks are like this too, sometimes you become very insular when you feel the difficulties around you or how you might be perceived, or if you concern yourself with things like that. I would never volunteer to go to a Chabad house on a Friday night in Oxford. Never done it. But I left my comfort zone and felt very uncomfortable. I was reaping a lifetime full of rewards in this. If your congregations are not leaving their comfort zones on a regular basis, then you are really selling short the larger vision for Judaism. That it's not an insular faith, it's a faith about engaging in the world. And I'm really hoping that in very substantive ways, and I now have some great partners, rabbis of all different types, from Reform to Chabad, who have left their comfort zones in ways that just make me want to rejoice. And in very substantive ways. Like we have a black bank in Newark, one of our largest synagogues actually in New Jersey, not just Essex County, decided to put their deposits in that bank with the understanding that that bank, in fulfillment of their CRA ratings, would give more loans to the local minority businesses. There are so many ways to help, and ultimately, even if you want to be as cynical as possible, that Jews, when they work to help other people, it's the best way to push forward the Jewish cause, quote unquote. And synagogues, though, in the larger sense of the word, I really do believe that we need to be engaged in the world. If not, we will never have a victory. I'm going to go here and then go back in front. Yes?
We met just a few weeks ago,
yes.
And thank you again for your extraordinary remarks this morning. What is the talk that you give, in brief, Bekitzer, to African?
I'm a lawyer and a politician.
I know, it's a hard thing. And you're related to Jewish people, so it's okay. But what do you give to an African American audience about Israel?
There are not often times, I'll be blunt, that I'm talking about Israel in front of black churches. There are times when blacks and Jews are together when I give the same talk that I'm giving here. And numerous, if not thousands, of conversations that I have when the subject of Jews comes up in an all-black environment or the subject of Israel comes up, I'm just as argumentative as I would be about the same issues if they came up in a Jewish audience. And the consistency of themes is what's critical to me when I talk. So the story of Adam walking into the Garden of Eden, I've told that in black churches, I'll tell that in synagogues. And I never want to be someone that changes. And Shmuley knows this. I had an opponent in my first 2002 race that went after me on many reasons. And if you watch the movie Street Fight, which was an Oscar-nominated documentary about that campaign, this is a man who came after me because of my Jewish affiliations. He would call Rabbi Boteach, Rabbi Boteach, and talk about the Jewish conspiracy to take over Newark. Many people say, well, Cory, gosh, you have to be so open with this issue during a campaign. And that kind of talk to me was horrific. I'm going to hide my relationship with the Jewish community or hide my relationship with a rabbi like Shmuley because of this environment. So my simple point is this, I will not change who I am depending for political convenience. I will not change who I am based upon the people I'm in front of. And the only way we're going to build bridges between communities is if Jewish leaders, when they get in front of Jews, talk about racism that still exists. How can we be in a nation that everybody in this room knows who Jean Benet Ramsey is? Everybody in this room knows who Natalie Holloway is. But can anybody in this room name one black child killed in my city or any city in America that hasn't been solved? No. We are living in a nation that there's still ugly bigotry going on. And we who are proponents of truth, or proponents of love, we must be willing to say the truth and express the love, no matter which audience we're in front of. Yes, sir.
Rabbi Booker, I think what resonated with myself and with much of the audience is this vision of hope that you have. I think the Jewish people have lived with hope, not just for the last 60 years in Israel, but for thousands of years. How do you balance this vision of hope that you have with times in your political or personal career where you've had disappointments? And the reason I'm asking this is, I think Israel over the last 60 years has always tried to make peace with its Arab neighbors, with very little success because they don't have a partner in peace. So when you try again and again and you fail, what would your message be to the leaders of Israel going forward now to try and make peace with people like Hamas and Hezbollah and Lebanon, who clearly are not?
So two quick vignettes. One, I don't need to turn to the people of Israel to tell them how to deal with lost time and time again. I just looked at great Israeli and Jewish leaders. I mean, one of the most powerful stories, I wept when I first heard it, was Wiesel's story about witnessing a Beit Din in the Holocaust. And after the three rabbis declared God guilty for allowing the atrocities to go on, they pulled out their tefillin. Shmuley put the tefillin on in the plane, and I was wondering, 35,000 feet, is God going to hear him any better? They put on the tefillin and prayed to God. And Wiesel says it's one of the most important Jewish values. He called it a value. The word gevaita, to continue, continuous. For my tradition, imagine what it was like to be on the verge of liberation, to just have had the Civil War end, have the first blacks being elected to the highest elected office. You know what we say now? The first black since Reconstruction. We always put that on, since Reconstruction. And then suddenly to have the Hayes-Tilden Compromise come, which unleashed a terrorism in the South like never has been seen before, where over 1,000 black elected officials were either murdered, dragged out of their offices, and killed in the streets. To still have the vision to persist. Now, I hope nobody here, and I'm sure some people have ever witnessed a murder. I had a person die, a child, shot, caught him in my arms, and sat with him as I vainly tried to stop his body from bleeding, hemorrhaging forth with blood. It was one of the most numbing, frightful experiences of my life. And I went home and I was enraged. And I indulged in something I rarely ever indulge in, the most dangerous, toxic spiritual force in the world, despair, hopelessness. And it wasn't until the next day that I saw this woman, who was a tenant president of my buildings, high-rise projects I lived in for about 8 years, that I suddenly snapped out of it. Because this woman told me about her son, who went overseas and studied I'm thinking about myself. Really, bravo, I went and studied. This kid put on an American uniform, went over and served his country in the military. And then came home. Imagine this, your child going away, and then coming home, and she was dragged into the lobby from her room. Because the person couldn't even speak to her. They just dragged her down into the lobby of the building. There was her son with 3 bullet shots in his chest, bleeding the lobby floor of that building red. And I'll never forget what I said to her, because you don't know what to say when people tell you about such horror. And truly, I think this is the most difficult part of my job. I mean, yesterday I'm with a woman whose sister was murdered. I'm with her in the supermarket, and she's trying to shop for the 3 children that are surviving, and now she has to take care of. She looks shell-shocked. What do you say to somebody in that moment? So me being the brilliant counselor, I know the rabbis here have a lot more experience than I do. I just look at her and I say, Miss Jones, was the woman's name. I said, I know where you work. I knew the money she made. She and I actually paid market rent to live in these high rises from heat, hot water, and a lot of problems. I said, why do you still live here? That was what I could say. She told me the story about her son dying. Like, how can you still live here and walk through the same lobby where your child was murdered? And she looks at me, this woman, and I said this on my inauguration. This is a story I began my mirror algebra. She looks at me and she says, why do I still live in brick towers? And I said, yeah. And she says, why do I still live in apartment 5A? And I said, yes. She goes, why have I been here for 38 years or whatever it was at that point? And I said, yeah. And she crossed her arms, she stuck out her chest, and she said, because I'm in charge of Homeland Security.